The punch that should have destroyed my career became the first honest thing to happen in that godforsaken office in years. They fired me within hours, of course. The nephew of the CEO doesn't get a black eye without consequences. But in a world built on lies, spreadsheets that don't add up, and handshakes that mean nothing, sometimes the truth hits harder than any fist ever could. And the truth? It was waiting for me in the most unexpected place, right there in the ashes of everything I'd lost. My name is Claire Donovan, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed in the system. 29 years old, 5 years at Barton & Lake Enterprises, perfect attendance record, and naive enough to think that hard work actually meant something in the glass towers of Riverside, Ohio. The morning everything changed started like any other. I arrived at 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes before official hours, just like always. The November rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our 14th floor office, creating rivers of distortion across the Cincinnati skyline, visible in the distance. I hung my coat in the same spot I'd claimed since my first day, made my coffee with exactly 2 sugars and a splash of cream, and settled into my cubicle in the administrative wing. Barton & Lake wasn't just another construction company, it was an institution in Ohio, with contracts spanning from Cleveland to Columbus, their name stamped on half the commercial developments built in the last decade. The office reflected that success: marble floors, contemporary art that nobody understood, and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Everything designed to whisper money and scream power. But beneath that polished surface, the place was rotting. I'd learned to navigate the unspoken rules, never disagree with management in meetings, always CC the right people on emails, laugh at terrible jokes from executives, and most importantly, never forget that competence meant nothing compared to connections. I kept my head down, did my work, and went home to my 1-bedroom apartment every night, telling myself that eventually, merit would matter, that the spreadsheets I perfected, the reports I filed ahead of deadline, the problems I solved before they became disasters, all of it would add up to something more than just another cost of living raise and a pat on the head. My desk was strategically positioned, close enough to the printer room to grab documents quickly, far enough from the executive offices to avoid unwanted attention. I had a small cactus named Fred, a photo of my parents from their 30th anniversary, and a motivational quote I'd stopped reading months ago. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. The office politics were a masterclass in corporate theater. Sharon from HR, who smiled like a shark and kept files on everyone's mistakes. Tom from accounting, who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times and now spent his days documenting every slight, real or imagined. The sales team, cocaine confident and loud, treating the rest of us like furniture. And above them all, the executives, floating through in their $1,000 suits, speaking in acronyms and golf scores. I'd trained myself to be invisible to them, efficient, reliable, forgettable Claire, the one who handled the Johnson account crisis without anyone knowing there was a crisis, the one who stayed late to fix other people's mistakes without expecting thanks, the one who genuinely believed, that this was how you built a career. My grandfather had worked 40 years at a steel mill in Pittsburgh, same company, same position, retired with a pension and a gold watch. Keep your nose clean, he'd told me at graduation. Work hard, stay honest, and the company will take care of you. But this wasn't his world anymore. This was a world where the CEO's parking spot cost more than my annual salary, where layoffs were announced via email, and where loyalty was a one-way street that only went up. Still, I persisted. I had student loans, rent, a car payment. I had a mother who bragged about her daughter working at that big company downtown. I had a resume that needed at least 2 more years here to mean anything anywhere else. So every morning, I put on my professional smile along with my professional clothes. I answered emails with exclamation points I didn't feel. I attended meetings where nothing was decided except the date of the next meeting. I pretended not to notice when male colleagues repeated my ideas and got the credit. I pretended not to care when the promotion I'd earned went to someone's roommate from college. I was good at pretending. It was, perhaps, My greatest professional skill. Everything changed the day Ethan Barton Jr. walked through our office doors. It was a Tuesday, 3 weeks after his college graduation. If you could call barely scraping through a business degree at a party school graduation. 22 years old, designer clothes that screamed trust fund. And that particular swagger that only comes from never having faced a real consequence in your entire life. The email announcing his arrival had gone out the previous Friday. We're thrilled to welcome Ethan Barton Jr. to our team as a junior executive coordinator. Nobody knew what that title meant, but we all understood the subtext. The boss's nephew was here, and we'd better make him feel important. I first saw him during the Monday morning meeting, while the rest of us took notes on quarterly projections. He scrolled through his phone, occasionally laughing at something on his screen. When David from operations was presenting cost-cutting measures, Ethan interrupted to ask if the office coffee could be upgraded to something that doesn't taste like dirt. The room laughed nervously. David's presentation was about laying off 30 construction workers to balance the budget. By Wednesday, Ethan had claimed the corner workspace that 3 senior employees had been competing for. By Thursday, he was showing up at noon, reeking of whatever bar he'd closed down the night before. By Friday, he'd made Sharon from HR cry after he called her sweetheart and told her to fetch him lunch. But management saw none of it. Or rather, they chose not to see it. He's still finding his feet. His uncle, CEO William Barton, would say with that paternal smile that made my skin crawl. We all need time to adjust. Ethan didn't adjust. He metastasized. He'd wander the floors like he owned them, which, technically, he someday would. He'd lean against women's desks, making comments about their outfits. He'd take credit for work he'd never touched, insert himself into meetings he had no business attending, and treat the office like his personal playground. I kept my distance. I'd survived 5 years by being invisible, and I wasn't about to change that strategy now. When Ethan walked by, I stared at my screen. When he held court in the break room, telling stories about his father's yacht or his semester in Barcelona. I ate lunch at my desk, but you can't avoid cancer forever. It spreads. The night it happened, I was working late on the Morrison bid, a $70 million project that could keep us all employed for another 2 years. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew and the ghostly hum of computers in sleep mode. It was past 9, and I was triple-checking numbers that had to be perfect for the morning submission. I heard him before I saw him. The elevator ding, followed by stumbling footsteps and off-key singing. Ethan, drunk again. I kept my head down, hoping he'd go to his corner office and pass out like he'd done twice before. Instead, the footsteps came closer. Well, Claire, right? His voice was thick with alcohol and something else, that predatory tone I'd heard him use with the younger interns. Working late, Mr. Barton, I said, not looking up from my screen. Mr. Barton's my uncle. He laughed at his own non-joke. You can call me Ethan. Better yet, you can call me later. I said nothing, just kept typing. The numbers on my screen blurred as my heart rate spiked. He moved closer. I could smell the whiskey, the too strong cologne, the entitlement that seemed to seep from his pores. You know, you're pretty cute when you're all serious like that. All work and no play makes Claire a dull girl. I need to finish this report, I said, my voice steady despite my shaking hands. Come on. He perched on my desk, his thigh inches from my keyboard. Nobody's here. We could have some fun. I could make things very good for you here. Or very bad. Your choice. That's when he touched me, his hand on my shoulder first, then sliding down toward my chest. Time slowed. 5 years of swallowed pride, ignored harassment, and professional dedication crystallized into a single moment of clarity. My grandfather's voice echoed in my head, but this time saying something different. Sometimes, kiddo, you've got to stand up for yourself, even if you're standing alone. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Don't touch me, he laughed. Oh, come on, don't be such a... The punch connected before he could finish the sentence. My fist met his nose with a satisfying crunch that sent him tumbling off my desk and onto the floor. Blood immediately started flowing, staining his white designer shirt. For a moment, we just stared at each other, him in shock, holding his nose, me in a stance I hadn't taken since my college self-defense class. "You crazy bitch!" he screamed, his voice nasal and thick with blood. "You're finished. You're so fucking finished." And in that moment, I knew he was right. But for the first time in 5 years, I didn't care. The call came at 7:15 a.m. the next morning. "Ms. Donovan, you need to report to Human Resources immediately upon arrival. Do not go to your desk. Do not speak to anyone. Come directly to conference room B." Sharon's voice was ice, professionally sharpened to cut. I'd spent the night awake, staring at my ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The crack of bone against bone, the blood on his shirt, the security camera in the corner that had recorded everything, or so I'd hoped. I dressed carefully that morning. My best blazer, the one I'd bought for important presentations. Professional armor for a battle I'd already lost. The walk from the parking garage to conference room B felt like a funeral procession. Everyone knew. Of course they did. Ethan had probably called his uncle from the emergency room. The gossip mill would have started grinding before his nose stopped bleeding. I passed colleagues who wouldn't meet my eyes. Sandra from accounting actually stepped into the bathroom to avoid me. Tom gave me a slight nod, the kind you give someone heading to the gallows. Conference room B was staged like a tribunal. Sharon sat at the center, flanked by Michael from legal and William Barton himself. 3 security guards stood by the door. My cardboard box of personal belongings was already waiting on the table. "Sit," William Barton said, not "good morning" or "let's discuss what happened." Just sit. I sat. "You assaulted my nephew," he continued, his voice containing a fury that his calm expression didn't match. "You broke his nose. He required medical attention." "He assaulted me first," I said. "He was drunk. He touched me inappropriately. I was defending myself." Sharon shuffled papers. "According to Mr. Barton Jr. Statement, you attacked him without provocation during a simple workplace conversation." "That's a lie." "Are you calling Mr. Barton Jr. a liar?" Michael from legal leaned forward, already building their case. "Yes," I said simply. "Check the security footage. It will show." "The security system was undergoing maintenance last night," Sharon interrupted. "No footage is available from that time period." The words hung in the air like a noose. I looked at William Barton, saw the slight smirk playing at the corner of his mouth, and understood. The maintenance was a lie. The footage had been deleted, or maybe it was being saved for blackmail if I tried to sue. Janet from the cleaning crew saw him on the floor. I tried. She can confirm he was drunk. "Janet doesn't work here anymore," Sharon said smoothly. "She returned to Guatemala this morning. Family emergency. Each escape route closing, each door slamming shut. This wasn't a termination. It was an execution." "You have 2 options," William Barton said, his fingers steepled like a movie villain. "Option 1, you resign immediately, forfeit any severance, and sign this non-disclosure agreement. You leave quietly. And we'll provide a neutral reference stating you worked here and the dates of employment, nothing more, nothing less." He paused, letting the threat build. "Option 2, we fire you for assault. We press criminal charges. We ensure that every potential employer knows you're violent, unstable, and a liability. Your career doesn't just end at Barton and Lake, it ends, period." The NDA was already printed, waiting on the table. 3 pages of legal language that essentially said I could never speak about what happened here, never mention Ethan's name, never suggest any impropriety at Barton and Lake. "This is wrong," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. "This is business," William replied. "You have 5 minutes to decide." I looked around the room. At Sharon, who'd eaten birthday cake with me 2 months ago. At Michael, who'd asked for my help with his daughter's college essay. At the security guards, who I'd wished happy holidays just last week. None of them would look at me. I need to clean out my desk, I said. Already done. Sharon pushed the cardboard box toward me. Your personal items have been collected. Your company laptop, phone, and access badges stay here. I opened the box. Fred the cactus, my parents' photo, the motivational quote I'd stopped reading. 5 years condensed into a container the size of a microwave. The NDA, William prompted. I signed it. What else could I do? I had $1,947 in savings. Rent was due in 5 days. My student loan payment in 10. They knew they had me trapped. And worse, they enjoyed it. Your final paycheck will be direct deposited minus the cost of Mr. Barton Jr.'s medical expenses, Sharon added, sliding another form across the table. Sign here to acknowledge the deduction. The medical expenses were $3,200 for a broken nose at an emergency room. The corruption wasn't even subtle anymore. I signed that too. Clean out your locker in the parking garage, Sharon said. Security will escort you. You have 10 minutes. The walkout was the longest of my life. The security guards bracketed me like I was a criminal. We passed the Morrison bid I'd been working on. Someone else would submit it now. Probably claim credit for my work. We passed Ethan's corner office, where a get-well-soon balloon bouquet had already been delivered. In the lobby, a few brave souls met my eyes. Sandra gave me a look of sympathy. David from operations actually mouthed, "I'm sorry." But nobody spoke up. Nobody stood with me. In this gleaming tower of success, cowardice was just another corporate skill. The parking garage was cold and echoed with my footsteps. I cleaned out my locker, gym clothes, an umbrella, emergency tampons. The detritus of a life I'd thought was building towards something. "Ma'am," one of the security guards said, almost gently. "Time's up." I carried my box to my car, placed it in the passenger seat like a coffin for my career, and drove out of the garage for the last time. In my rearview mirror, the Barton and Lake Tower rose into the gray Ohio sky, a monument to everything wrong with the American dream. But as I drove home, something else rose too. Not hope, not yet, but something harder, sharper, anger. 3 days after my termination, I returned to clean out my apartment mailbox, an overflowing mess of bills and grocery store circulars. The unemployment office had already rejected my claim. Barton and Lake had reported I was fired for workplace violence, making me ineligible for benefits. I was making instant ramen for the 3rd night in a row when my phone buzzed. Sandra Morales. "Don't hang up," she said immediately. "I'm calling from a burner phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? Rocket Coffee on 5th Street, 7 a.m. Sandra, I signed an NDA. Just meet me, please." The line went dead. I almost didn't go. But at 6:45 a.m., I was sitting in the back corner of Rocket Coffee, watching the door. Sandra arrived precisely at 7, looking over her shoulder like a spy in a bad movie. She'd been with Barton and Lake for 12 years, stuck in middle management purgatory. Brilliant, but wrong gender, wrong connections, wrong everything for advancement. "I shouldn't be here," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Then why are you?" She pulled out her phone, swiped to her photos, and showed me a picture. It was a document, slightly blurry but readable. I was working late Tuesday, printing quarterly reports. The printer jammed on the executive floor, so I used the one by accounting. She swiped to the next photo, zooming in. Someone had left these in the output tray. Probably meant to grab them and forgot. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen. It was an email thread, printed out. The subject line, Morrison bid, adjustment guidelines. My heart stopped. The Morrison bid. The $70 million project I'd been working on the night Ethan assaulted me. But these emails were discussing something different. Inflating costs. Creating phantom subcontractors, skimming percentages off the top. The numbers were staggering. We're talking millions in fraudulent billing. "Keep swiping," Sandra said. More emails, more evidence. Ethan Barton Jr. Name appeared repeatedly, along with 2 senior VPs. They were using his inexperience as cover, the nepotism hire too stupid to realize he was signing off on fraud, but too protected to ever face consequences if caught. This is... I couldn't finish the sentence. Felony fraud, Sandra supplied. Interstate commerce violations, FBI territory if it crosses state lines, which the Morrison Project does. Why are you showing me this? Sandra's jaw tightened. Because what they did to you was the last straw. Because I've watched them destroy good people for over a decade. Because Janet from cleaning didn't go back to Guatemala, they paid her $10,000 to disappear. And she's terrified they'll report her expired visa if she talks. She swiped to one last image. And because of this, it was another email, dated 2 days before Ethan assaulted me, from William Barton to his nephew. Claire Donovan is becoming a problem. She's too thorough with the Morrison numbers. Find a reason to get her out, or make one. I felt the coffee shop spin around me. It hadn't been random. Ethan hadn't just been a drunk, entitled predator. He'd been a drunk, entitled predator with a mission. They planned it, I whispered. Maybe not the assault specifically, Sandra said. But they needed you gone before you found the discrepancies in the Morrison bid. Ethan just chose the worst possible way to do it. This is evidence of conspiracy, fraud, corruption. Sandra pulled her phone back. I've already made copies, hidden them. But I can't do anything with them. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, a mother in assisted living. I can't afford to be a whistleblower. But I can, I said slowly. I've already lost everything. You signed an NDA. About the assault, not about fraud I discovered after my termination. Sandra smiled for the first time. There's more, lots more. I've been documenting things for years, hoping someday someone would be in a position to use it. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Sandra said frankly. But ask yourself this. What do I gain from setting you up? If this is a trap, I'm already implicated just by meeting you. I'm risking everything to give you this. She slid a flash drive across the table, concealed under a napkin. Everything I've collected, emails, financial documents, recorded conversations from meetings where they forgot I was taking notes, enough to bury them if used correctly. I palmed the drive, my hand shaking slightly. This could send people to prison. Good, Sandra said flatly. Ethan assaulted you. William protected him. They've stolen millions from clients, taxpayers, their own employees. You punched one predator in the face. This is punching the whole corrupt system. What about the security footage from that night? Sandra's smile turned sharp. Funny thing about that, the system wasn't down for maintenance. It confirms it was working perfectly, which means they have footage of Ethan assaulting you, and they destroyed it. That's evidence tampering, another felony. She stood to leave, then paused. There's a journalist at the Cincinnati Enquirer, Marcus Thompson. He's been sniffing around Barton and Lake for years, but could never get anyone to talk. His card is in the drive files. Sandra. I was never here, she said. We never talked. But Claire? Make them pay. For all of us who can't. She left, and I sat there, feeling the weight of the flash drive in my pocket. It felt like holding a loaded gun, or maybe a bomb. I went home and plugged it into my laptop, an old personal one they couldn't trace. File after file opened before me. Financial records, emails, audio recordings, a conspiracy mapped out in digital breadcrumbs, dating back 3 years. Ethan Barton Jr. wasn't just a predator, he was a criminal. William Barton wasn't just protecting his nephew, he was directing a fraud scheme worth millions. And I wasn't just a fired employee with a grudge, I was evidence that they'd destroy anyone who got too close to the truth. The NDA I'd signed was toilet paper compared to what I now held. But I needed to be smart. One woman with a flash drive versus a construction empire with lawyers, politicians, and unlimited resources. I opened Marcus Thompson's contact information. Investigative journalist, 15 years experience, 2 Pulitzer nominations. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed out an email from a new Proton Mail account. Mr. Thompson, I have information about systematic fraud at Barton and Lake Enterprises. I have documentation. Are you interested? His response came within an hour. Yes. When can we meet? Marcus Thompson looked nothing like I'd imagined. No rumpled suit or coffee-stained tie. Instead, he wore jeans and an Ohio State hoodie, nursing a black coffee in a diner 40 miles outside of Riverside. He'd chosen the location, far enough from Barton and Lake's influence, busy enough that we'd blend in. You're Claire Donovan, he said, not a question. How did you? I've been investigating Barton and Lake for 3 years. When an employee gets fired for assault right after working on their biggest bid of the year, I notice. He pulled out a notebook, analog and unhackable. But I need more than suspicions. I placed the flash drive on the table between us. Everything you need is on there. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. 3 years of evidence. His eyes sharpened. How did you? Does it matter? He studied me for a long moment, then pocketed the drive. I'll need to verify everything. This could take weeks. I don't have weeks. My savings are almost gone. They're already poisoning my reputation. Every job application I send out gets rejected within hours. They're blackballing you, Marcus said matter-of-factly. William Barton plays golf with half the hiring managers in Ohio. But if this evidence is what you say it is, that won't matter soon. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own life. Marcus would text from different numbers, asking for clarification on documents, verification of dates, context for conversations. I spent 18-hour days building a comprehensive timeline, cross-referencing everything Sandra had given me with my own memories and saved emails from my personal account. Sandra, meanwhile, stayed inside the belly of the beast. We never contacted each other directly, but sometimes I'd find unmarked envelopes under my apartment door, new documents, fresh evidence, breadcrumbs leading deeper into the labyrinth of corruption. One envelope contained something extraordinary, a recording from a board meeting 3 days after I was fired. William Barton's voice, clear as day. The Donovan situation is handled. She won't be a problem. Now, about the Morrison bid adjustments. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Janet, the cleaning lady who'd supposedly fled to Guatemala, reached out through Marcus. She was hiding in Indianapolis, terrified but angry. She'd seen everything that night, Ethan attacking me, my self-defense, his drunken threats afterward. She'd even taken cell phone photos of him bleeding on the floor, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles he'd brought up from his car. They paid me to disappear, she told Marcus in a recorded interview. Said they'd call ICE if I didn't take the money and leave. But I'm here legally. I've been a citizen for 5 years. The investigation grew beyond just Marcus. He brought in a forensic accountant who found trails leading to offshore accounts, a federal contact who confirmed the FBI had been watching Barton and Lake for potential RICO violations, a cybersecurity expert who recovered deleted emails from a backup server Sandra had secretly maintained. But as the net tightened, so did the pressure on me. My apartment was broken into while I was at the grocery store, nothing stolen, but everything disturbed, a message. My car tires were slashed, once, twice, 3 times. My mother called, crying. Someone had sent her photos of me from college, drunk at parties, with threats to release them publicly if I didn't back off. They're getting desperate, Marcus said during one of our meetings. That means we're close. I was living on credit cards now, each day adding to a debt I might never repay. The stress was eating me alive. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating regular meals, stopped answering calls from friends who didn't understand why I'd suddenly vanished from social media and life. But I also stopped being afraid. Every threat, every intimidation tactic, every dirty trick. They were confirming what I already knew. Barton and Lake wasn't just corrupt, it was criminal. And criminals only threaten when they feel threatened. Late one night, Sandra called from another burner phone. They know someone's been leaking, she said, voice tight with fear. They're doing an internal investigation. Polygraphs for everyone with access to executive files. Get out, I told her. Take your kids and leave. I can't. If I run now, they'll know it was me. Sandra. There's going to be a board meeting tomorrow. Emergency session. Williams flying in 3 executives from their Chicago office. She paused. Claire, I think they're going to try to destroy evidence, shred everything, wipe servers, claim a cyber attack corrupted their systems. I called Marcus immediately. How sure is your source? He asked. Completely. Then we publish tomorrow morning. It's not everything we wanted, but it's enough. Can you get to my office by 5 a.m.? I want you there when the story breaks. I didn't sleep that night. I packed what little I cared about into 2 suitcases, left my keys on the counter for the landlord I was about to stiff on rent, and drove through the darkness towards Cincinnati. The highway was empty except for long-haul truckers and the occasional deer at the road's edge. I thought about Ethan, probably sleeping off another hangover in his luxury apartment. About William, confident in his power and connections. About all the employees like me who'd been stepped on, silenced, or scared into submission. By the time I reached Marcus's office, the sky was starting to lighten in the east. Sandra had sent one last message. They're here early. Shredding trucks in the loading dock. Whatever you're going to do it now. Marcus looked at me as his finger hovered over the publish button on his computer. Once this goes live, there's no going back. They'll come at you with everything they have. I thought about the NDA I'd signed, the career I'd lost, the life I'd built that had crumbled in a single night. Then I thought about Janet in hiding, Sandra risking everything, and every future Claire who might walk into that gleaming tower believing in fairness and justice. Do it, I said. He clicked the button. The story went live at 5:47 a.m. Exclusive. Evidence of massive fraud at Barton & Lake Enterprises. Within minutes, it was trending. Within an hour, 3 federal agencies had issued statements about opening investigations. Within 2 hours, Barton & Lake's stock price had dropped 12%. And somewhere in that gleaming tower in Riverside, William Barton was about to learn that sometimes the truth hits harder than any punch ever could. The counterattack came within hours. By noon, Barton & Lake had issued a statement calling me a disgruntled former employee with documented mental health issues and a history of workplace violence. They produced a psychiatric evaluation I'd never taken, complete with a forged signature. They leaked photos from my college years, the ones they'd threatened my mother with, to make me look unstable and unreliable. William Barton himself appeared on local news by 2 p.m., his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression one of wounded disappointment. Ms. Donovan was terminated for violently assaulting a colleague, he said, looking directly into the camera. Rather than take responsibility for her actions, she's fabricated an elaborate conspiracy theory. We're confident that any investigation will prove these allegations baseless. Within hours, I became the story instead of the fraud. Violent woman seeks revenge on former employer. Disgraced employee's desperate smear campaign. Questions raised about accuser's credibility in Barton & Lake scandal. My college roommate was interviewed, saying she always thought I was a bit off. A professor I disagreed with claimed I had anger management issues. They even found an ex-boyfriend who said I was vindictive and obsessive. Marcus tried to refocus on the evidence, but the narrative was shifting. I watched from his office as TV pundits debated my mental stability instead of discussing the fraud documents. Social media filled with hot takes about believe all women versus innocent until proven guilty, completely missing the financial crimes at the center of everything. This is what they do, Marcus said, frustrated but not surprised. They make it about character assassination instead of facts. But then Sandra did something extraordinary. She walked into the Cincinnati FBI field office with a box of original documents and a lawyer at her side. By evening, her statement was public. I've witnessed systematic fraud at Barton & Lake for 12 years. I can corroborate everything Claire Donovan and Marcus Thompson have reported. I have recordings, emails, and first-hand knowledge of criminal conspiracy. The tide began to turn, but Barton & Lake doubled down. They sued me for defamation, breach of contract, and theft of proprietary information. The lawsuit sought $50 million in damages, a number so absurd it was clearly meant to terrify me into silence. They sued Marcus and the Cincinnati Enquirer, too, trying to get an injunction against further reporting. Then they played their nastiest card yet. A woman named Rebecca Walsh came forward, claiming I had assaulted her in the Barton and Lake bathroom 2 years ago. She had a police report, backdated but official-looking. She had medical records showing bruises. She even had a witness, Ethan Barton Jr., himself, who claimed he'd tried to mediate between us. It was completely fabricated, but it looked real enough for doubt. "They're destroying me," I said to Marcus, staring at my phone as the hate messages poured in. Death threats, rape threats, people finding my parents' address and posting it online. "They're trying to," he corrected, "but you're still here." The FBI moved quietly but efficiently. While the media circus raged, federal agents were serving warrants, seizing computers, freezing accounts. The forensic accountant Marcus had brought in was working with federal investigators, following money trails that led to 14 different shell companies. Then Janet emerged from hiding. She didn't just have photos from that night, she had video. 30 seconds of shaky cell phone footage showing Ethan grabbing me pushing him away, him coming at me again, and then the punch. Clear self-defense. She'd been too scared to mention it before, worried they'd find a way to destroy her even with evidence. But watching them destroy me on national television had made her angry enough to overcome her fear. "They think they can buy anyone, threaten anyone, silence anyone," she said in an exclusive interview with Marcus. "But some things aren't for sale. The truth isn't for sale." The video changed everything. Rebecca Walsh suddenly recanted her story, admitting she'd been paid $20,000 to lie. The psychiatric evaluation was proven fraudulent. The doctor whose name was on it had died 3 years ago. The ex-boyfriend admitted Barton and Lake's lawyers had coached him on what to say. But William Barton had one more play. He went nuclear, calling a press conference at Barton and Lake headquarters. He stood at the podium with his wife, his daughter, and Ethan, whose nose was still bandaged for sympathy effect. "This has gone too far," William announced. "These baseless accusations have damaged not just our company, but our family. My nephew is a young man who made the mistake of trying to be friendly with a troubled colleague. Now he's being painted as a predator." Ethan stepped forward, looking like a choir boy in his navy suit. "Claire Donovan attacked me without provocation," he said, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. "I've never hurt anyone in my life. The fact that she's turned a moment of workplace violence into this conspiracy theory shows how disturbed she really is." They announced a $100 million countersuit. They released their own documents, carefully edited to remove incriminating sections. They brought out employees to testify about what a great company Barton and Lake was. For 48 hours, it worked. Public opinion started shifting again. The story became too complicated for easy consumption. People started tuning out, moving on to the next scandal. That's when the FBI arrested Ethan Barton Jr. Not for assault, that was a state matter, but for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. The Morrison bid hadn't just been inflated, it had been for a federal building project. That made it a federal crime. They arrested him at his apartment at 6 a.m. in full view of the neighbors. The perp walk was beautiful. Ethan in handcuffs, stumbling in his pajamas, cameras catching every moment of his privilege crumbling. Within hours, 2 VPs were also in custody. William Barton was told not to leave the state pending further investigation. The house of cards was finally falling. But in the rubble of their reputation management campaign, I was still standing there, bloodied but unbroken. My name had been dragged through mud, my character assassinated, my life turned inside out for public consumption. Marcus looked at me as we watched the arrest footage for the 10th time. "You won," he said. "Did I?" I asked, thinking about my destroyed reputation, my empty bank account, my family in hiding from harassers. "You're still here," he said. "They threw everything at you, and you're still here. That's what winning looks like sometimes." The courtroom was packed the day I testified before the federal grand jury. I wore the same blazer I'd worn the day they fired me, my professional armor, now battle-tested. My hands didn't shake as I raised them to take the oath. My voice didn't waver as I spoke the truth they'd tried so hard to bury. For 3 hours, I laid out everything: the assault, the cover-up, the fraudulent documents, the conspiracy that reached from Ethan's drunken entitlement all the way up to William Barton's calculated crimes. I presented evidence, answered questions, and watched as federal prosecutors built their case brick by brick with my words. "Ms. Donovan," the lead prosecutor asked, "why didn't you immediately report the assault to the police?" "Because I knew what would happen," I replied. And I was right. They destroyed evidence, paid off witnesses, and fabricated psychiatric evaluations. Imagine what they would have done if I hadn't had proof. When I finished testifying, I walked past William Barton in the hallway. He looked older, grayer, smaller somehow. His legal team surrounded him like a funeral procession. "You destroyed everything," he hissed at me. "No," I said, stopping to face him. "You did that yourself. I just told the truth." The indictments came down 2 weeks later. William Barton. 16 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Ethan Barton Jr. 12 counts including assault, fraud, and money laundering. 4 other executives faced various charges. The company itself was under federal oversight, its assets frozen, its future uncertain. Marcus's follow-up reporting was relentless. He published the full video of Ethan's assault, the unedited emails, the audio recordings. The story went national, then international. Barton and Lake became a case study in corporate corruption, taught in business schools as an example of how not to run a company. Sandra, protected now by whistleblower laws, told her story publicly. Other employees came forward, dozens of them sharing their own experiences of harassment, fraud, and intimidation. The FBI opened additional investigations into other construction companies connected to Barton and Lake. The civil lawsuit against me was dropped. The defamation case collapsed. The $50 million threat evaporated like morning mist. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Ms. Donovan, this is Jennifer Martinez from Riverside Development Partners." I knew the name. They were Barton and Lake's biggest competitor, a company that had lost multiple bids to fraudulent submissions. "We've been following your situation," she continued. "We're impressed by your integrity and your courage. We're restructuring Barton and Lake under federal supervision, bringing in new management, cleaning house completely. We'd like to offer you a position." "I'm not interested in charity," I said. "This isn't charity. We need someone who understands the company's operations but isn't tainted by its corruption, someone the employees trust and the feds respect." The position is Senior Vice President of Compliance and Ethics. The salary was 3 times what I'd made before. The responsibilities included overseeing all financial audits, implementing new ethical guidelines, and working directly with federal oversight to ensure transparency. "You want me to help rebuild the company that tried to destroy me?" "We want you to help build something better from its ashes. The employees who didn't participate in the fraud, and that's most of them, deserve better leadership. The clients deserve honest service. And frankly, you deserve to see your vision of what that company could become reality." I thought about Sandra, still working there, trying to keep her head above water. About the construction workers who'd almost lost their jobs to fraudulent cost-cutting. About the young employees just starting their careers, hoping for better than what they'd witnessed. "I have conditions," I said. "We expected that." My conditions were simple but non-negotiable: full transparency in all dealings, an anonymous ethics hotline reporting directly to me, the power to fire anyone who violated ethical guidelines, regardless of their position, and a public apology from the board for what happened to me. They agreed to everything. The day I walked back into the Barton and Lake building, now under new management and a new name, Riverside Construction Group, the lobby was different. The pretentious art was gone, replaced with photos of actual building projects and the workers who built them. The executive floor was being converted into collaborative workspace. Ethan's corner office was now a break room. Sandra was waiting by my new office, tears in her eyes. "You came back," she said. "We came back," I corrected. "You stayed and fought from the inside. That took more courage than anything I did." The local news covered my return. From fired to hired, whistleblower returns as executive. William Barton, out on bail pending trial, was quoted as saying it was a publicity stunt. Ethan, under house arrest, posted on social media about cancel culture until his lawyer made him stop. But I wasn't there for them anymore. I was there for the employee who came to my office on my first day back, crying because she'd been harassed for months and finally felt safe reporting it. For the accountant who brought me evidence of a manager's expense fraud, knowing I'd actually do something about it. For the construction workers who sent a thank you card because their safety equipment budget had been restored. At the federal trial 6 months later, both William and Ethan Barton were convicted on all counts. William got 15 years in federal prison. Ethan got 8. The other executives received various sentences, most involving significant jail time. I was there for the sentencing, sitting in the gallery next to Sandra and Janet, who had become an American citizen the month before. When the judge read the verdict, Ethan looked back at me with pure hatred. But William didn't look at all. He kept his eyes on his hands, finally seeing the cost of corruption. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked me how it felt to win. "Justice isn't winning," I said. "Justice is just the restoration of balance. The real victory will be building something better from what remains." Marcus published his final piece on the Barton and Lake scandal that week. He ended it with a quote from me. "They thought firing me would silence the truth. Instead, it gave me the freedom to speak it." The truth, as it turned out, was the most powerful punch I could have thrown. 1 year later, I stood in my new office on the 14th floor, the same floor where I'd once been invisible, now transformed into the heart of Riverside Construction Group's ethics division. The company was unrecognizable from its Barton and Lake days. We'd returned $47 million in fraudulent overcharges to clients. We'd implemented the most comprehensive ethics program in the construction industry. Our employee satisfaction scores had risen from the bottom 10% to the top quartile. The FBI case study on our transformation was being taught at Quantico. My desk, solid oak, not the pressed particle board of my cubicle days, held different mementos now. Fred the cactus, thriving and twice his original size. A framed photo from the Ethics in Business Awards ceremony where I'd been honored alongside Sandra. A handwritten note from Janet. "Thank you for showing me that truth has power." The morning sun streamed through windows that had once felt like prison bars, but now felt like freedom. I was reviewing applications for our new ethics internship program when Sandra knocked on my door. "The board meeting is in 10 minutes, she said. As Senior Director of Internal Audit, she was my right hand in rebuilding this company's soul. "Any surprises?" I asked. "Just one. They want to discuss your title again." I laughed. They'd been trying to promote me to Executive Vice President for months, but I'd refused. Senior VP of Compliance and Ethics was enough. I didn't need a fancier title to know my worth anymore. The boardroom where I'd once been terminated was now where I held weekly ethics reviews. The table where they'd pushed an NDA at me was where I now trained new hires on speaking truth to power. The security guards who'd escorted me out now greeted me with genuine respect. Claire, the new CEO, Jennifer Martinez, began the meeting. "The transformation you've led here is remarkable. The Department of Justice is calling us a model for corporate rehabilitation." "It wasn't just me," I said, nodding to Sandra and the other employees who'd stayed and fought for change. "It was everyone who chose integrity over comfort." "Nevertheless," Jennifer continued, "we need to acknowledge what you've accomplished, which is why the board has voted unanimously on something." She slid a document across the table. It wasn't a promotion, it was a press release. "We're establishing the Claire Donovan Integrity Award, a $50,000 annual scholarship for students pursuing careers in business ethics. We're also creating a permanent ethics ombudsman position, reporting directly to the board, with complete independence from management influence. I read through the document, my throat tight with unexpected emotion. And, Jennifer added, we want you to select the first recipient. I thought of all the young employees who'd watched in silence as corruption flourished, too scared or too powerless to speak up. This scholarship would help create a generation that wouldn't have to make that choice. I accept, I said. After the meeting, I walked through the office floors. Where once there had been fear and whispered conversations, now there was genuine collaboration. The sales team no longer treated support staff like furniture. The executives ate lunch in the common cafeteria, not private dining rooms. The nephew of our biggest client had applied for an entry-level position and was told he'd be evaluated like anyone else. My phone buzzed with a news alert. William Barton had lost his appeal. Ethan had been transferred to a higher security facility after attempting to bribe a guard. 4 other companies connected to their fraud network were under investigation. The dominoes were still falling. That evening, I stood where it all began. The spot near my old cubicle where Ethan had assaulted me. The space had been converted into a meditation room, a quiet place for employees to decompress. Where violence had erupted, peace now resided. Tom from accounting found me there. I owe you an apology, he said. I saw him heading your way that night. I should have stayed. Should have done something. We all do what we think we can survive, I told him. The system was designed to make us afraid. Breaking that fear takes time. He nodded, then handed me an envelope. This came through inner office mail, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 words, thank you. Below it, 43 signatures. I recognized some names, employees who'd been too scared to speak up before. Others were strangers, people whose lives had been touched by the ripples of truth spreading outward. I kept that letter in my desk drawer, next to my parents' photo and the motivational quote I'd finally started reading again. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Churchill had it almost right. But I'd learned something more. Sometimes failure is the doorway to a success you never imagined. Sometimes getting fired is the first step to finding your real power. And sometimes a single punch thrown in self-defense can knock down an entire empire built on lies. I looked out at the riverside skyline, the same view from the same building. But everything had changed. The glass towers still reached toward the sky, but I no longer saw them as monuments to power. I saw them as they really were, structures built by human hands, as fragile or as strong as the integrity of the people inside them. My grandfather had been wrong about one thing. The company won't take care of you. But if you take care of your principles, if you stand for truth even when standing alone, if you throw that punch when the moment demands it, sometimes, just sometimes, justice takes care of the rest. I was Claire Donovan. I had been fired for hitting the boss's nephew, and I had been promoted for telling the truth. The difference between those 2 facts was the most important story I'd ever tell. A reminder that in a world full of Ethans and Williams, there are also Sandras and Janets and Marcuses. There are people who will stand with you when standing becomes necessary. There are fights worth having, truths worth telling, and punches, literal or metaphorical, worth throwing. My name is Claire Donovan, and this is what winning really looks like. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Claire's journey resonated with you. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this story about standing up against workplace injustice, please subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage and truth. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed or experienced something similar? Your stories matter too. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the truth is the most powerful weapon we have.